Yes, welcome to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, and everything just went out of whack. Damn, I hope I can get through the show. Everything was working fine until I started doing the show, and then all of a sudden my levels are totally off, and I've got that, guys in the chat, actually I got to start that. Let me start the YouTube stream. I was a little behind, but it is the No State Project for February 23rd, 2019. Glad to be with you here. Let's get set up here on my YouTube stream. So you can go to YouTube, get my YouTube channel, No State Project, and you can hear the show. So somebody just let me know if we're getting that awful static that I thought was cleared up before the show, so it would suck to finally be live again because it's been a couple of weeks since I've been live here on the LRN stream to have that awful static. So we'll see what happens. It won't be in the podcast, which is cool because it's easy enough to just eliminate that, but hopefully it doesn't make it so that the show is unlistenable. I did find that if I have my speakers plugged in, I think that interferes with the mixer. So hey, you kind of you live, you learn, and you make you move on. I want to thank everyone for the continued support of the big show. If you would like to do that, and it is appreciated and needed, go to markstevens.cells.com. I should put, I'm a little my attention was taken up right immediately prior to the show, so I didn't do everything I was supposed to, but it's at markstevens.cells.com. You can just go to markstevens.net, go to the website, and you can help support the show there, which is appreciated, of course. Dan and Bill for the continued generous support of the show in New Hampshire. I appreciate that. And Marc and Don and Nelson and, of course, Eyal and Chris in California. Much appreciated. So if you want to join me on the big show today, it's guys, let me know in here if you're hearing a static or a buzzing behind me, because just so I can feel a little more comfortable doing the show if I know that that's not doing that. I'm trying to, might be just kind of low, but let me know anyway if you hear that static. So yeah, you can also reach me on Skype. I'll check my Skype. It's Frank Rizzo 3, but the number here is 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. Okay, no static. All right, so I had to adjust the level a little bit because for some reason once I started doing the show, I was peaking really bad. So hopefully we can edit that part out. But I'm glad to be with you here. They're playing Free Talk Live on LRN. I'm not on the LRN stream. Oh, come on, guys. What the? It had my bumper music. Okay, the feed it's Free Talk Live. Wow. Well, at least we've got this. We can still do the show. You want to join me? It's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign. I hear both. They're overlapping each other. What do I got to do? Do I have to just? Oh man, I thought I had all that static, and I got so much to get to. I'm trying to. All right, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign. It is not a toll-free call. I guess if you're using a cell phone, it's not a big deal. But yeah, 218-632-9399. Passcode is 2020 with the pound sign or the hashtag. And one of the things, we talk about anarchy on the show. Why don't we want a ruling class? You got a ruling class in, everywhere. They say that they rate the happiness of places, and you got a couple places in Europe, of course, that like Denmark or Scandinavian countries that rank very high on quality of living and all that, and they have a ruling class. Well, the problem with the ruling class is because you have a number of individuals that the basic principles of right and wrong, okay, morals, don't apply to them. That they have a moral right to do what is immoral. That's the problem. And from that comes all the abuse. It comes all the crimes that are committed with impunity because they can get away with it. So when you have these violent hierarchies where there's no holding the people in them accountable, that they turn a blind eye, they just let it, whatever. You have continued abuse. They're emboldened by that. Okay? So you look at what's going on right now in the Vatican, and there's supposed to be a summit there this week to address the victims, of sexual abuse, well, rape, molestation, which is systemic through the Catholic Church. I mean, recently we had, let's see what we got here. Yes, the New York Times reported not that long ago, Catholic priest abused 1,000 children in Pennsylvania, report says. 1,000! Bishops and other leaders of the Roman Catholic Church in Pennsylvania covered up child sexual abuse by more than 300 priests over a period of 70 years. This is systemic, going to the top. Hierarchy, where they are protected. It's not open. There's no transparency there. So what do they cover it up. In fact, what's come out in, this week, I think it's being reported today, Cardinal says Catholic Church destroyed documentation of sex abuse. This is abuse of power by the administration, Cardinal Reinhard Marc told bishops at a Vatican summit on preventing sexual abuse. They destroyed the records. Oh, these people should be in prison. Prison. I don't support governments. I'd like to see a voluntary society, but until we get there, the leaders of these priests and their leaders that covered it up and then destroyed the reports, the documentation, should be in prison. A German Roman Catholic cardinal claims the church destroyed documents in an effort to cover up sexual abuse that has engulfed the institution in scandal. Well, it's been decades in the, Cardinal Reinhard Marc spoke at a Vatican summit on Saturday, that's today, telling 190 church leaders that the harms inflicted on children and youth were the result of abuse of power in the area of administration. Files that could have documented the terrible deeds and named those responsible were destroyed or not even created, Marc said. Instead of the perpetrators, the victims were regulated and silence imposed on them. The stipulated procedures and processes for the prosecution of offenses were deliberately not complied with, but instead canceled or overridden. The rights of victims were effectively trampled underfoot and left to the whims of individuals, end quote. That was this Cardinal Marc. Among Marc's recommendations including the redefining confidentiality and secrecy within the church, publicly releasing statistics and details on abuse cases, and publishing legal proceedings. Aye. The study indicates some documents were manipulated or did not contain what they should have contained. No specific responsibilities. This refers to the Munich diocese, but I don't think the German case is an isolated one. Wow. The summit began days after a formerly high-ranking American cardinal, Theodore McCarrick, was expelled from the priesthood after a Vatican investigation found sex abuse allegations against him were credible. Wow. Put his ass in prison. We'll be back. I seem to be on the LRN stream, so we'll be back in just a few moments. Don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on my YouTube channel and streaming live. Of course, we originate in New Hampshire at the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM. We're here most Saturdays from 2 to 5 Mountain Standard Time, and it's 4:20, I guess, on the East Coast. So yeah. Somebody mentioned here that they were in Newfoundland. I guess that's what they're thing. So if you can put in there where you are, where this Newfie is from. My Irish family, the Moriartys, are from the Irish Loop, of course, on the Avalon Peninsula. So they were generally in St. Vincent's. So if you're a Moriarty, or a Haywood, or a Dobbin, and you're on the Irish Loop, St. Vincent, St. John, Maddox Cove, Carbonear, then we might be familiar. So yeah, just put that in there. But I'll get to the calls. Please, again, like I mentioned on the last show, if I don't do this, I won't be able to finish. So we see that the Catholic Church, and I got to tell you, there is a debate about whether the Catholic Church has been a force for good in the world. And two of the ones that were arguing that it has not been a force for good were Christopher Hitchens and even better, I might get some hate, but even better because Christopher Hitchens gave a great, compelling argument. Yes, I agree. But Stephen Fry, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe because I just like Stephen Fry better and he's a more eloquent speaker. And I don't think Stephen Fry ever supported George Bush, and I kind of harbor that I just couldn't understand how someone who's so logical and reasonable, usually based on facts, would support George Bush. Anyway, but I highly recommend looking for the Catholic Church debate with Stephen Fry and Christopher Hitchens, especially the argument that Stephen Fry made. So here you've got institutional cover-up. You're talking about people with power. There's a tremendous amount of money involved with the Catholic Church, and there is no oversight. It's not transparent. And when you have such power, they tend to look out for each other. Okay. And nowhere is this better demonstrated than when you look at something like in Europe, 15, 20 years ago, the Dutroux affair, where you had, pedophilia, well, more specifically, child molestation and trafficking that were done and covered up at the highest levels of the Belgian government. There were protests about this. Hundreds of thousands of people, they were shutting down investigations. And just like the Catholic Church, turning a blind eye. You got government. You got all kinds of government, all levels. So this has to be a regular part of the show. Something has to be done. It won't, but you can see this playing out right now. For those who are not aware, Jeffrey Epstein. I know I'm probably going to have to ban some people, block some people on this because they're going to just be jumping on that. See the Jews! Jeffrey Epstein, or Epstein. I think it's Epstein. Convicted child rapist and trafficker. 10 years ago, given a sweetheart deal. He's a billionaire, owns an island in the United States Virgin Islands. Known. There's many, many witnesses. Many have come out about this. Convicted. Turns out, and he's being sued by, and Trump was sued. Yes, this connects to Trump. And yeah, I know it connects to Bill Clinton. I'm no fans of bureaucrats. They're all scum, pretty much. But here is a guy there with this credible evidence to show child trafficking, where you've got dozens of young girls, who were from the time they were 12 years old, used for sex parties. And he's caught. Now these are, if you go through some of this, some of the girls who didn't know the other girls, had similar stories and can actually report on pictures of them that were found in his home with them naked or, or in provocative dress. So there's pretty solid evidence against someone like Jeffrey Epstein. But because he's a billionaire, and because he probably has incriminating videos and pictures of people very high in government, like Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, that's got to be what Putin has on him. This tape is nothing compared to if he's got video of Trump or with underage girls. And it turns out that this is real Pizzagate stuff, not like the crap that 4chan did a couple years ago. This is real. So what happened was Epstein got the U.S. attorney at the time, Alexander Acosta, who is a Trump appointee. He's a cabinet member. Was the U.S. attorney at the time. Worked in collusion and conspired with Epstein's lawyers not to provide the plea agreement, which meant almost no jail time. Well, yeah, he did some time, less than 2 years he was given. They declined to prosecute. They didn't think they had enough evidence. Oh my gosh, what, dozens and dozens of independent witnesses? Give him a traffic ticket. Give him 5 years. It would be easy. Then you don't even need evidence. Like they do to the plebes. If you're a billionaire and you're and you were big and you rub shoulder, you have to, you're going to have some pretty tight government, relationships to become a billionaire. You don't get prosecuted like we do. You don't. So even though he got a couple years, he only went to the jail at night. It was a work release. And they did not disclose this sweetheart deal to the victims. The victims have testified that they were told there would be a federal prosecution, that they would be, that Epstein would be held accountable. They lied. Acosta lied to the victims, covered things up. Yeah. And here's where where it starts to really make sense. What was the motivation? Well, part of the deal was Acosta, as U.S. attorney, gave immunity to the co-conspirators of Epstein. The co-conspirators got immunity for child trafficking. Oh, we got a crisis at the border with human trafficking. Immunity for the co-conspirators, which there are flight logs to show Bill Clinton was there multiple times, as was Captain Bonespur. I'll finish this in the next segment. We'll be back here on the No State Project in just a moment, so don't go away. Friend.fm, the Liberty Radio Network, and streaming live on my YouTube channel, No State Project. And someone's asking, why am I not saying anything? We're on a break. So this is an actual radio broadcast. That's why I say it's the Liberty Radio Network, and that's where I originate on LRN, and I stream it live just to be able to reach more people and just to have a broader audience. But it's still a radio broadcast, and for those saying, oh, well, just I got a lot of material, but doing 3 straight hours. I mean, come on. I'm not Ernest Hancock. I mean, I can't do 3 straight hours without a break. You got to bear with me. I apologize for that. But, if most people don't listen to the live broadcast anyway. Most people listen to the podcast, which I put up on markstevens.net today. And there won't be any commercial interruptions. So that's why. So for new people, I'm going to have to remember that we are going to a break, and I'll mention that for the YouTube stream. There's not much going on. So, but we're dealing with a radio broadcast, so it's not, but anyway, let's get back, because I want to get to the calls after this. I was talking about the Epstein deal, where, and it actually came out this week that a judge, after all these years, has finally made a decision that the prosecutors, which included Alexander Acosta, who is now a current cabinet member, he was, this is why you see it's all theater. He was confirmed despite this. They still confirmed him. He lied to the victims. A federal judge finally ruled that federal prosecutors under Miami U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta broke the law when they concealed a plea agreement from more than 30 underage victims who had been sexually abused, molested, and trafficked by wealthy New York hedge fund manager Jeffrey Epstein, a federal judge ruled Thursday. While the decision marks a victory for crime victims, the federal judge, Kenneth A. Mara, stopped short of overturning Epstein's plea deal or issuing an order resolving the case. Because they all stick together. Nothing's going to come of this. It's just like Trump said. He could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and he wouldn't lose any votes because people don't care. Well, not enough people care. We are such a vocal minority when it comes to these things. So where is all the outrage where you had a guy go to shoot the pizza place in D.C. because he was so outraged about Pizzagate? Why does he go? He's not shooting up the Catholic Church. Not that I'm recommending that. And you know that that abuse is going on there. It's not a conspiracy theory. Here you've got this. Where is the outrage at the Republicans for covering this up? They're all bad. And what is really disheartening here is that no matter what goes on with these investigations, no matter what is uncovered, I think they could have literally an HD video of Donald Trump raping a child. He would still get to stay in office. He would not be prosecuted. And even by some miracle, if he was prosecuted, he wouldn't do any time. Because billionaires, even purported billionaires, even people who have lost $1 billion, don't go to prison for these things. The rules do not apply. And even more to the point, who was in charge of the FBI when this investigation was closed under Acosta at the U.S. Attorney's Office? Who was head of the FBI? Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller. The same guy who oversaw the FBI and knowing that most of the faces and the passports for the alleged hijackers in 9/11, knowing that those were stolen and that those were not the real, they weren't the real, they weren't the alleged attackers, the alleged hijackers, still never changed it, never updated that. That same Robert Mueller, people who think he's this grand savior for some reason, he was head of the FBI during this. They're talking about a billionaire, and it involved a former president. Nothing. So this is all to do with why this shouldn't be a ruling class, because you can have international sex trafficking with children. Hey, made front page news about the Lawrence affair going all the way into the White House. Nothing happened. You have national television where you have obvious, some may call it treason with Iran-Contra. What happened? George W. Bush, that scumbag who just died. He pardoned everybody. And who was the AG at the time? Barr, who's AG now. It's no transparency. And even if there is transparency, nothing happens. Nothing happens. This is why we cannot have a ruling class. This is why we have to push for one, and I need to get people on the show. who have an opportunity to at least raise the issue of changing policy. Because this whole build the agora, how's that working out? We talked about boycotts. How many of those have gone through and actually had an impact? What is sickening is this is going to play out. There'll be evidence. There's already mountains and mountains of evidence of conspiracy, crimes, immoral acts. It's just going to go on business as usual. And it's not just because you have so many people in government compromised. People don't care. People generally don't give a damn. They just do not care. Well, even if it comes out, and this is something you can see playing out right now, about Bill Clinton actually being quoted, not Bill Clinton, Trump being quoted saying about what a great guy Jeffrey Epstein is. That some say he may like beautiful women as much as me, maybe more, though he does like them on the young side. And all people can say is, well, what about Bill Clinton? He was on that plane too. Well, they both should be in prison. Yes, they're all bad, but it is almost beyond comprehension that people could just keep looking the other way. I think point blank, we're not going to have a revolution in the streets. We're not going to have any kind of mass demonstration or any kind of mass boycott where people just stop paying taxes as a means of getting their attention. We're not going to build an alternative and it's just going to go away. The idea that we can just ignore government away, how is that working out for anybody? That is not a strategy for change. Not when you have a massive, multi-trillion-dollar cartel at play. I guess it's because I'm not the angry, young man anymore. I'm the not quite as angry older guy. And you got to look at the evidence. And is there any evidence that trying to build an alternative is having any impact whatsoever? Well, yeah, let's just go to these functions. So a small group of people can make a lot of money. You can fly people in to give talks and pay them thousands of dollars, but the machine just keeps going on and on and on. There's no visible impact that you can see. And the people that are committing these horrific crimes against children and women just get away with it. Of course, Khashoggi could be murdered and dismembered. Nothing's going to happen to the billionaires. But we'll be back with your calls in just a moment. And for those on YouTube, we are on a break for a few minutes. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, Liberty Radio Network, and streaming live, of course, on my YouTube channel, No State Project. So if you're not subbed, get subbed. Because we also do a live broadcast on Wednesdays. That's a little bit more regular because I'm not in California usually on Wednesday. So that's 4 to 5 Mountain Standard Time right here on my YouTube channel. And of course, you can always go to markstevens.net to get the podcast. You can also get Government Indicted, and you can get you can set up a consultation if you're being attacked by a bureaucrat, and that's where we also have the templates available that have been used successfully. And I was supposed to have another success story posted. I will get that as soon as I can. And I did not get the documentation for the two. Somebody had two tickets thrown out. I didn't get that. But to get back to what I'm talking about, I'm not saying that there's no chance. I just think we have to take a look at the tactics that we have, what's available to us and what is actually working. Where has anybody made a measurable difference in the police state, in statism? Is it really a victory? I guess you can say it's a victory in some sense of getting where marijuana is being continually decriminalized. So that's good. But are there less taxes? That actually increases taxes. But I guess, again, I'm going to get on board with this. I need to speak to someone who's a Free State Project participant. I don't know why they, anyway, and maybe because, that I think is something we can really do. And I mentioned on the show before, and Larry Krasner. I know that a lot of anarchists are absolutely dead set against the notion of voting, but I got to tell you, to get someone like Larry Krasner in, who's the district attorney in Philadelphia, huge. I mean, this is a guy that, again, he's still a bureaucrat. He's still part of the problem, but he's doing something is being done because people actually took it serious and voted in. There are groups that do that work towards educating and getting prosecutors thrown out of office and getting someone like Larry Krasner in. So if you've got a guy who is actually willing to not prosecute victim, code violations, especially, pot possession, that I think is definitely a step in the right direction. You're taking power away. That takes power away from the ruling class. Okay, you're not you've got a guy who's not complicit in the drug war, which is filling all these beds in these private prisons. At least it's something. It's where you've got somebody who can actually change the policy. Because remember, someone even pointed out, the politicians are just setting the policy that the psychopaths, the automatons with the guns, are now putting into practice. So change the policy. I'm not 22 years old anymore and pissed off at the bullies. I still don't like them, but I'm not. I have to look at, is it really a strategy to just ignore them? Who was the one that said, you may not take an interest in politics, but it certainly takes an interest in you. You can only ignore them for so long, and they may knock on the door, and that's why I help do the show, is so to be able to help people when that inevitable knock or on the door comes or the letter comes. Where's your tax return, and how to effectively deal with that and limit the damage these parasites want to do to you. But when we look at things like this, when it's playing out, look, what happened to Nixon? This is a guy who I love the quote from Good Morning Vietnam, where the general says, "Good man." You talk about Nixon. Nixon, why? He leaves he's so corrupt. He leaves a pile of crap behind him a mile long, and I consider him a good, close personal friend. This guy is responsible not just for, as the commander-in-chief, for the deaths directly under his command in Vietnam and Korea and Laos. This guy has even more blood on his hands because he delayed the actual peace talks. This is a human piece of garbage. How many days did he spend in prison? None. See, I was a little kid at the time and didn't really hear much about that. I was too young, but you get older and you see the replays about that. You see that he was pardoned so that the nation can heal again. So Jeffrey Epstein should be pardoned so that the victims can heal. Nixon should have been put in front of a firing squad. Waterboarded before that. Horrible, horrible example of a human being. And we're watching something even worse play out right now. You've got somebody who is only an extreme public example of a politician. He doesn't have a filter. He never knows when to shut up. He actually said in front of national television crews, he actually said he didn't need to do the state of emergency. Well, then it's not an emergency. He's a crook. He's a lying piece of... The guy actually is on video lying about so many things, and people still support him. Well, they're all corrupt. Yeah, the concept of government having a ruling class. This should be a wake-up call. But it's not. It's not. Strangely enough, Trump doesn't drink. That's what he says. He's, everything that comes out of his mouth is a lie. He's never done drugs. He's never drank. Oh, but he walks. But he rapes 13-year-olds allegedly. He raped his wife, and then they try to argue you can't rape your spouse. He cheated on his wife while she was in the hospital having his child and did it with a porn star. Nothing against, hey, I got a lot more respect for porn stars and the porn industry than government. And then he lied about covering it up. His own attorney, the fixer, in the words of his own recent, current attorney, as the lawyers do, they fix it, is going to prison for campaign finance violations. And he is an unindicted co-conspirator. And people still. So, what is, I haven't had the time to look at it. What is, all this stuff with Epstein coming out? Is this just more Q stuff? Is this just more 4D chess from the Cheeto? Mr. Captain Bone Spurs? The guy who wouldn't go to Vietnam? Where I don't blame him, but to lie to get out of it, he could have been a man about it. This is the same guy that said he would have ran into the building and saved the kids in Parkland last year. Even if he had no gun. He would have charged in there anyway. Yeah. Oh, okay. It's a systemic, organization-wide abuse. It's just like Nasser, who was the doctor for the, I think it was with the girls in the gymnastics. Now, they covered it up. Now, why? Not only should he be in prison the rest of his life, but the people who allowed him to get away with it, the organization. It's just like there's so much money in the gymnastics. There's so much money in college sports that they overlook it. They just, if you have enough money. Someone's saying I voted for Hillary. No, I don't vote. I have not voted. I voted one time out here in Arizona, and that was it. And so when I first moved out, I think there was an election in '94. I voted for Arizona stuff, and I've never voted for a president. So no, I didn't vote for Hillary. I think Hillary's a horrible, horrible person. I think, she's got blood on her hands also. I'm saying this as an anarchist. The point here is that not that one side is better than the other. The point is that having a ruling class enables these predators to be able to to commit crime on such a level. But we're at the top of the hour break, so we got a little bit more of a break for those watching the YouTube stream. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, but we got about 5 minutes, and we'll be back. But I'll come back shortly and do the text. So we'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project, second of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM, and streaming live on my YouTube channel. And you want to join me, 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. And somebody's saying here, by voting, you are begging your masters. I don't give a crap what the circumstances are. Well, you have to look at things in a much broader context, I think. You could, the circumstances can change. So I look at it as that self-defense is always morally justified. So I don't think you can we would be accurate in making a blanket statement like some anarchists and voluntarists will do, or anarcho-capitalists, that all voting. And I think I used to look at things that way also. I mean, because I haven't voted in decades. I only voted the one time as an adult. But, you learn and you look at things, you get more context. You understand things better. So if you have an opportunity to put someone like Larry Krasner in, who's going to have a direct and immediate impact on people's lives, on the community, that's begging the masters? You've got somebody who's actually changing the policy and the enforcement. To me, it's clear it's an act of self-defense. It's morally justified. You have to look at the context. I'm not talking about federal elections where you're not going to accomplish a damn thing. There's absolutely no record of anybody at the federal level doing something positive for liberty that I know of. I don't say it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the local level, and the head of the network, Ian Freeman, also Free Talk Live. You're going to tell me that someone with a proven track record who's gone to jail for his beliefs, or Derek J., you're going to tell me if one of those guys was running where you know that if they are elected, there is going to be a positive change in policy and how it's enforced, you would not help them get elected? Again, I said I'm not the angry 20-year-old anymore. I think I'm a little more mature. I think I understand things better. I've had a lot more experience dealing with politicians directly, I've confronted them many times. I've questioned them. I know they're full of crap. I know they can't support their claims. I know that they're criminals. I know that they're just men and women forcing us to pay them, and that they need a prison system because they don't have any reason and logic. So if you've got somebody who, at the local level, someone like Ian Freeman is running for office, and there's absolutely no doubt, given his record, policy is going to change for the better. The community is going to be somewhat better off by having him in office. You would take a back seat and you would still not, I'm not saying vote for everybody, but just at least trying to support him and get him in? Well, it's just like trying to get into the mafia and trying to change it from within. The difference is the mafia is not morally accepted. They're looked at as the criminals that they are. It would be morally acceptable to kill them outright. And most people are not going to defend it. You would be seen as the hero. You would be seen as the guy exercising, self-defense and protecting the innocent. Whereas if you shoot a government agent, you're like what Carl Draga did, you're going to be seen as the villain because they're seen as having a moral right to be immoral. So it's not a fair comparison. Yeah, I know big money gives us Mo, Larry, and Curly to vote for. Yes, especially at the federal level. No question. I'm talking about at the local level where you can affect change at the local level. Larry Krasner, Philadelphia District Attorney, having an immediate and noticeable, measurable impact. So the question is, and this is for anybody who may disagree, but if you know that someone like Ian will have a direct impact on policy, would you still not vote or otherwise support them in getting elected? Someone's saying, would you care to have a debate on the... Yeah, sure. Call 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. I'm happy to discuss this. Let's, we don't have to talk about court the whole 3 hours. I would prefer if we spend an hour or so on court and legal stuff, and let's talk about actually getting to a voluntary society. I can't see where if someone who's going to change the policy is running, and you can be pretty certain that they will stand by the principle and change the why somebody would not support him. So, hopefully he's got some good news for us. We got Mike from North Carolina. Welcome back to the show. I've been called a lot worse. Oh, North California. Yeah, it's been a while, Mike. Man, the audio is really bad on your end. So Mike is asking if we're challenging a property tax, which what we're doing in Northern California, and they don't respond. Where do we go? What's unfortunate is that there's not much remedy other than paying it, because other than paying it, we have no remedy to stop them. Technically, there is a remedy to the Anti-Injunctive Tax Act, which is, and I've showed this on the show before, is that if the tax agency they can't prevail under any circumstances, they don't have the evidence, and they have violated, let's say, the due process clause, then that is an exception to the Anti-Injunctive Tax Act, and you can maintain the action. The problem is, which I've mentioned on the show a lot recently, is that not a single judge in 20 years has acknowledged that the exception even exists, let alone determine if our facts fall within that exception. So there's not much you can do. There's no other way to stop them, peacefully.
That really gets me about this is that they ask us or me to call, and when we did, there was no response.
Right, I remember and that's why I had mentioned, we can take that potentially to the city, the county commissioners and the county attorney, but that doesn't mean they're going to stop. The record is not very good at getting them to stop on their assessments. They are going to take the property, and there's no remedy that we have to stop them. You could file a temporary restraining order seeking an injunction against them. They're going to quote Article 13, Section 32 of the Constitution, that there's no jurisdiction for the court to hear that. Just hold on. I think we got your audio cleared up, and we're up against the break. We'll be back here on the No State Project talking about tax cases again with Mike in California. So we'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away. And for the YouTube, we are on a break from the radio show, so please just hold tight for a few minutes, but I will be participating on the chat. Well, welcome back to the No State Project. I just screwed that part up. Had myself muted, which I'm sure to someone like Foreign Source is probably happy with. Maybe want me to do that even more. But welcome back. It's LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, and of course, streaming live on my YouTube channel, No State Project, made it easy. Foreign Source, the Constitution applies, but he gives Marc a windmill to tilt. He gives Marc a windmill to tilt against. Well, I've spoken to more than just, YouTube commenters over here, Foreign, and I have video of the Supreme Court Chief Justice, Scott Bales. Unless you think putting other people in prison is evidence that a written instrument called the Constitution applies, then maybe you should call the show. I think tilting at windmills is sort of thinking that ignoring government will make it go away. just ignore it. And when enough people ignore it, then it goes away. It just goes away. You don't have to do anything. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get. We have Mike. We still have Mike.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wish I was able to tell you better. We could take it to the county commissioners, but I'm not too confident that they're going to that they would do anything to stop the assessment from going through and stopping it from taking the property. It might be worth a shot getting it on the record, but bottom line, if they don't want to stop, which they're probably not going to want to do, the only peaceful way to stop them from taking the property is to give them the extortion money.
Well, at this point, they have only sent me bills and not anything in the rears. So it's like the bills that I've received is like, okay, you owe me this much for this time, this much for that time, or whatever. It's it's like it's a new bill every time, and there has not been any real threat that I perceived as a threat.
Well, it would be nice if it would continue that way, but if their computer system is anything like the IRS's, it is programmed to escalate if they don't get that money, and eventually it'll turn into a warrant, and they'll just take the property. They'll send you a notice, a final notice, that if you don't pay on this day, to vacate, because they will be sending the sheriff down to take your property. There's no other peaceful remedy other than paying. And for those who start screaming common law, that is the common law remedy.
Oh gosh, no! I know way better than that.
Well, I wasn't thinking of you, Mike. I'm thinking of on the YouTube chat.
I understand. Okay, Mark, I'm sure you have some other calls, and I do appreciate all your help. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and contact me off air. We'll see. Maybe we could put a call into the county commissioners.
Yeah, you had mentioned that once before, way back when this thing started. Yeah, we'll do that. Thank you.
That shot. All right, appreciate the call, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to, I think we have a new caller. He was on earlier. I think I recognize. We have area code 917. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from? Area code 917. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from? Maybe they're just listening in. We're going to go to a friend of mine who has been on the show in a while. Be good to hear him. We got Non-Entity. Hey, welcome back. Did it snow over by you? What the hell?
Okay, I unmuted myself. Is this the vegan support line?
Okay.
No, that's not what I wanted to call about. Actually, I was up in Congress when the snow hit, which is north of Wickenburg, and it was amazing. It was beautiful. And then my neighbor sent me a picture of a snowball that he'd made in the front yard, and the snowball is, from the looks of the picture, it's probably 5.5, 6 feet in diameter.
Wow.
So I think the answer is yes, snow.
Well, very cool. I'm in Mesa, and while it snowed in Fountain Hills, it snowed in Cave Creek, and it snowed a lot in Tucson, it only rained here. But I was able to get a picture of the Superstition Mountains, which border it's the eastern border of the valley.
Yeah, they have it spectacular.
Yeah, they're covered. And then, of course, the San Francisco Peaks, obviously, you can see them from the valley. They're covered even better than over here. So yeah, I'm glad you got. I just got rain though.
Well, I'll send you a picture from where I was in Congress. So I called to tell you that you're full of about this voting thing. So I have two personal experiences, which I think somewhere in the long distance past I've already related. But so there's Harry Brown, that's number one, and Harry Brown was an amazing man and principled out the yin yang, and so he seriously thought that there was a chance that he could get voted in, and that he could, like, once he had the power of being president, he could just eliminate all this stuff. Like people are hoping that Trump will do, just like, okay, the EPA no longer is authorized, and this department and that department. So as he was running, the more he went through the running process, he realized that in order to actually get the support that he needed, he was going to have to compromise himself, and that's what he did. And I kind of sort of lost all respect that I had for him, except for the fact that what it really proved to me is it's like you think, well, we can get a good guy in and then the good guy will do good stuff. And, Harry Brown was a really good guy, and the system, it's not the people, it's the system, which leads me to my second personal example. My mother was offended by something that was going on, and she decided that she and a friend of hers.
Well, hold on a second, Nani. We're up against a break. We won't be able to hear you. My name is Marc Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM and streaming live on my YouTube channel. Remember, those watching the stream, we got a few minutes because it is a radio broadcast. But I will be on the chat. We'll be back with non-entity and the issue of voting and anarchy in just a few moments. So don't go anywhere. Yes, welcome to the No State Project, talking about anarchy and can anarchists vote? Is there a moral justification? Is there a logical justification for voting? And so we've got non-entity on talking about that. And Nani, before you go into the second experience, let me just take a moment to address this thing about Harry Brown being a great guy. Do you mind?
Sure, go ahead.
My experience with Harry Brown was that he was a condescending, dismissive prick. But
okay.
Yeah, it was.
So you want me to go on?
That was just my experience with the guy. I mean, I like some of the things that he wrote, and I would say that at the federal level, I've mentioned. I said the same thing to Mike, who was running for president. I can't remember. Gosh, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. It's like, well, why bother at the federal level when the fix is in? I mean, look what they did to Ron Paul, for heaven's sakes, and he's a congressman. I'm not advocating ever voting at the federal level. I think it's a waste of time. But I think at the local level, where if you had somebody with a track record like Ian, where he's going through a local election and does not have to compromise his principles, I think it's different. But okay, so what's the second example you got?
Well, so my mother was offended by this commission in where she was living, and she and a friend decided, well, if we can get ourselves voted into those commissioners, we can vote the commission to cease existing. It was like 5 commissioners. If they got 3 out of 5, then they could just vote themselves out of a job. So she went to work and got herself elected and got her friend elected, and they had somebody else that was supportive on the commission, and so she became a commissioner, and then she started becoming a part of the machine, and her whole reason for getting elected seemed to get lost somewhere. And so the bottom line was she was a commissioner for many, many years. She got voted in repeatedly. She's got her name ensconced in granite because of some big project that she was part of. And so the point is, it's not the person, it's the dynamic of just human beings are human beings. And given a position of power and the need to to work with others in order to achieve something means that you have to compromise, and the power wins out. It just it's like you get a taste of that power, and you think that, okay, well, I just have to compromise here, and then I can do this. And well, then you compromise there, and then well, you got to make another compromise. That, and it just one thing adds on top of the other, and then you're part of the machine. And so I disagree with you, and I have had experience in very small town politics. And so you're talking about, well, the federal level. Well, let's work at the local level. And what I saw was exactly the same dynamics in a really, really small town. It was all about, compromise and power, and nothing was different between the very high levels of power and the very low levels of power. So that's the end of my rant.
Well, I appreciate that, and I've talked again myself about the ring of power. The ring is what the problem is. I get that. I'm talking about doing something. Yeah, but doing something and putting another iron in the fire as far as what we can do. Is like I believe that bringing suits against the insurance and hitting them in the pocketbook is one other way we have. And if we can hit them in the money, that counts more than voting, of course. But and so I understand this the psychological dynamic of this, and I don't want to. You can reveal as much as you want, but I remember you telling me that your mother was not wired the same as other people, and that she may have had.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as I was making the phone call, I was thinking about that, but I think we all this spectrum, whatever you call it, that runs from psychopath down to whatever the other end of the spectrum is, where you're fully empathic. It's a spectrum, and we all have. We're all somewhere on that spectrum, whether we're at one extreme or the other. The dynamics of I think it pretty much applies to almost every human being to a certain degree or not. That dynamic is built into the human animal.
Well, there's certainly, like Zimbardo has done a lot of studies and work on this. The whole Lord of the Flies effect. And I've written about this myself.
Zimbardo, it has basically come out that he got caught up in the same thing, that he manipulated the whole Stanford prison experiment was a lie to a certain degree, because he got in that position of power and where he had to compromise to make his experiment work, and everything just totally went to crap.
Well, I get that, but there were issues there, and there were also ethical issues with this Milgram experiment, but that does not negate Milgram's. But as far as Zimbardo, it doesn't negate the rest of the work that he did, 40 years after that. I'm aware that when someone is in that situation, even if and I don't agree that we're all on the spectrum, that some have psychopath, we all have certain psychopathic tendencies. I do agree that when somebody is put into that situation, and Milgram proved this, that somebody will hurt an innocent person by orders. Now, you can't. Now, even if when you see the videos of that, you can tell that at least what they showed, it wasn't the people that were hurting the other people were bothered by it tremendously. They had an empathic response, but it was overridden by the concept of authority. So that's why I disagree in part with your characterization that we're all on a spectrum that, from psychopath to empathic, because that would come out in a brain scan. But I want to stick to this here. I agree. And I don't think it's a way that we're going to fix everything. I think it's one thing that in limited circumstances, because how often do you have somebody who's shown he's willing to go to jail to stick by their principles, like Ian? I don't think that Ian, if he got elected, would become just another cog in the machine. I just don't, I don't think that that's what would happen. I'm sure a lot of people that's actually true. That's why we have to know what the we have to know something of the individual and what their track record is like. What kind of person are they? It's like people thinking that you could put a monster like Trump in, and he's actually going to affect positive change. Look at his history. He's a great businessman. He filed bankruptcy 6 times.
Well, he's obviously using the dynamics of the system to his own personal benefit, which is kind of. And I agree with you. My sense of Ian is, he went to jail, yeah, and he spent a bunch of time. He's got a lot of principles.
And the same thing with Derek J.
But I still don't. So okay, let me approach this from a different angle. The quote from Thomas Pynchon, I think that's how you pronounce it. If they can get you asking the wrong questions, the answers don't matter.
Okay, well, hold on now, Nanny. We got to finish in the next segment, but we'll get back. Wrong question. We'll get back to that, and that's it. That's a good point. We're talking. Hey, look, is it moral to vote? Is it moral to participate in the political system? I think if it's an act of self-defense, the easy answer is simple. Yeah. But we're gonna finish the discussion with nonentity when we get back in just a moment. If you're on YouTube, it's a few minutes because it's a radio broadcast. So just hold tight. We'll be right back. Yes, welcome back. You listen to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, and of course streaming live from my YouTube channel, No State Project. We're talking with non-entity regarding voting. And welcome back. You were you had a quote about asking the wrong questions.
Yeah. So the reason for that quote is the idea that by continuing to focus on trying to get somebody who can work within the system to change the system, even if that person works really hard, it's keeping the focus on working within the system, which in effect is supporting the system. Even if you're working against it, you're supporting the dynamics of the government and voting and all of that as the way to solve problems. So you're supporting it either way. Whereas I think it was Buckminster Fuller who pointed out that you can't solve the problem that a dynamic creates by working within the same dynamic. You need to ignore it and move in a whole different direction. And I'm paraphrasing that really badly.
I think what you mean. I think what he said was that, or what he wrote was that you cannot fix the problem with the same reasoning that created the problem.
Exactly.
I think that's
what
a
I
little close.
badly tried to say.
So we're talking about. We're talking about attacking the moral part of that the system itself is immoral, and in
exactly.
Ernie. So if somebody is getting elected, like Ernie gets a lot of opportunity to be able to get a platform to educate people. And the whole position should be, and I'm sure someone like Ian would do, that the entire position should be, this is an immoral institution and it needs to change. And so the focus should be on that the immorality or the on how unethical the organization is and how the policies are so unethical and cannot be reformed. That should be the platform. But let me throw this out at you. What if you're doing like in Arizona and or Utah? I'll bring that up in a second. What if you're just voting on a policy shift? Let's say to repeal something or to change a policy, like like an initiative.
Well, so yeah, you may be making small gains here and there, but you're still, the whole act of participating is supporting the concept that this is moral, that this is a proper way for some people to own other people. And so
I got to disagree
what I'm
with you.
saying is it's, for instance, what's happening now, there's really cool stuff going on with cryptography and the ability of people to completely control their own lives. For instance, the internet is now, the internet is a construction of the Department of Defense, and they're using it really well now. They're shutting down anybody that wants to say anything that they don't like. And there's a whole lot of stuff going on where people are creating networks that are completely distributed and cannot be taken down. And with cryptography and distributed networks, you're actually making it impossible for this whole governmental power, working within the system. And you're doing a Bucky Fuller thing, and you're totally going off in a different direction, which has the potential to change the entire game.
Well,
I just find that the concept of voting, first of all, I consider it immoral. Even if you're using it defensively, I don't find it to be effective for the reasons that I've just laid out. And if we instead focus our energy on going in a different direction, which has the capability of changing the game, then your energy's not wasted. That's kind of my point.
It's not a zero sum here. When you got education, non-cooperation, voting on policies, insurance claims, the cryptocurrency, which I don't know. I'm not seeing the effects of it. Maybe, but I do take issue with the statement that if you vote, you're supporting, even if it is an act of self-defense. So if we take it on a individual level, if someone is a consistent bully, and I decide to stand up and stop that bullying, that doesn't mean that I support the bullying by fighting and defending myself. I don't see how an act of self-defense could, one, are we in agreement that an act of self-defense is morally justified?
I agree. Self-defense is morally justified.
So it's not immoral if you're voting simply as an act of self-defense.
Well, it depends. If defending yourself, which is morally justifiable, but doing it using the dynamics of the voting system, if that, defending yourself, and that might work, you might actually save yourself from something, but by supporting the dynamics of voting, you're basically still supporting the system, and the system itself is what is wrong. It allows, that system allows people to gain power over others. So, you follow my differentiation?
Yeah,
here?
I don't agree that you're actually supporting it. You're defending yourself and trying to limit, like damage control, like going to court. When we go to court, we're not supporting. I don't see it as if I go to court to defend myself. I don't see that I'm supporting and using their rules against them. I don't see that I'm supporting a system of violence. I'm trying to limit the amount of damage that they're trying to cause me. It doesn't mean I support the court system. So I don't, so given that example, I see it the same way. If I have many tools to defend you at my disposal to defend myself, and I have an opportunity here that is a viable opportunity for self-defense, then I don't see that is supporting the very evil or immoral institution that we're trying to stop.
Well, okay, taking your court case thing, if you go into that venue, all of those people are getting paid, and that the dynamics of the court whole system is, it is functioning. So the fact that you go into the court, even if you win, the act of participating in that system is helping that system survive. So.
It's the same thing. If you go into court and you defend yourself, you are supporting the system that's attacking you.
Well, I wouldn't say you're supporting it, but you were helping to feed it. You were helping it to stay alive.
Yeah, because you're in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If you do nothing, they're going to.
Yeah, that's why we just have to. The whole playing within that game is just it's a holding action, I guess is what it is. It's not moving us. It's not moving us to something that is like a whole different paradigm, a whole different way of having human relations on a large scale.
So this is.
I don't know that I have any. I'm also not a teenager and ranting, so I'm just throwing ideas out there and whatever.
It's just I was against the very idea of voting at all until it was my personal preference, and I've said on the show if someone's in New Hampshire and Ian or Derek J is running, I think they don't vote at the federal level. It's a joke. But at the local, you may be able to affect some change. I don't see it as trying to get someone like Derek J. and I don't see that as supporting the system. What supports this, that's the thing that you're getting to the whole futility issue, which we don't discuss on the show anymore, regarding a different issue. Almost everything about modern life and living in Western society is supporting government, and there's no way around it. You're going to support them in one way or the other. You have no choice. So we take certain steps to minimize that and to maybe move towards getting to a voluntary state. We're at the top of the hour break, so just hold tight. We've got a few minutes here. We'll be back here on the No State Project in just a couple of minutes with the third of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio, so don't go away. In fact, what we're going to do is, I'm going to have to take a break, so we'll be back in a moment. Don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. I know Eren go bra, but somebody is putting in some Gaelic here in the chat. It's pretty cool, but I know the one part was I looked it up. It means I'm great. I can't even begin to try to pronounce Gaelic, but Eren go bra. That's what I got. Anyway, welcome back. I wanted to talk more with Non-Entity, but he dropped off. But we got a lot of calls to get here today. I just want to point out that I am aware of these pieces of garbage that are government, and you have where the people have a referendum or an initiative to change the law. Let's say like in Utah to decriminalize marijuana, and the legislature goes Aba Fongul, and they change it. There's not much hope that you're going to be able to get enough people to say Aba Fongul back to the legislature and vote all these pricks out. I see it as morally it's self-defense is always morally defensible, right and justified, and voting, you don't have a choice in having government until, violent revolution will not do anything and cannot possibly be successful. So there's got to be non-violent solutions to it, at least in the big picture. And so education, non-cooperation, maybe voting for policies of people like Ian or Derek Freeman, and hit them with claims against the insurance. But it's also, constantly calling them out on how immoral they are. And if they are just men and women forcing us to give them money, they're criminals. Criminals! So let's get back. Tom from the Big D. Welcome back.
Hey, Mark. Sounds like you got a good show going this afternoon. I want to call in and touch on this voting thing.
Okay.
I agree. I've seen some videos with people in New Hampshire, the other politicians, that are getting really pissed off with the guy from the free state being elected. because they're throwing such a big monkey wrench in there. And
Really?
it's grinding it to a halt, and it is effective. It is effective, bottom line.
So, is it effective beyond just pissing off the establishment, legislators and bureaucrats?
Well, it's effective by the fact that they can grind things to a halt. If everything's about voting to increase taxes or whatever, if these guys are always throwing a monkey wrench in there, that's the best we can hope for. I mean, I understand the concept of the voting thing. It is an immoral act. I believe I believe that as well. But it's a double-edged sword. If we don't vote and only 1,000 people go to vote, then we're going to be under that gun. Like you said, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But in the local situation specifically, when they tried to raise our taxes here locally for school millages or this spoopy bus system, we've got 3 people on a bus, and they want to pump all this money into this, make more buses and more infrastructure. We can at least go in there and vote against it. That I'm for. I don't believe voting for federal issues it's a joke. That's all said and done and arranged. We have no say so in that at all.
No, it is a joke. And someone tried to point out that all the local leaders are directly under federal control. I don't think that that's actually factually accurate. I maybe in some situations, in certain contexts, that might be true. But it's not like someone at the federal government is literally dictating the day-to-day operations of a state or local agency. That's typically not the way things seem to work. I guess I look around and you see what's happening. Like I mentioned in the first few segments of the show, just the corruption is just so absolutely in your face. We know why it's happening and it's allowed to happen. We know what the problem is. It's just what is being done right now to move us away from that. And it's great that, what you're saying. If you've got some people, grinding things to a halt, really slowing things down in New Hampshire, cool. But other than that, I guess it's just a matter of you just don't see the results. I mean, I did all those libertarian anarchist things, and I still I like going to Jackalope. It's a lot more relaxed. It's not a money-making scheme. Where you can go and be around other anarchists and you can talk about things, but it's not a matter of, flying people in and paying the speakers thousands of dollars. And it's just it's just a social thing. Nothing of nothing concrete has ever come from it, right? I mean, if I'm wrong, someone correct me.
Right, and here's one of my problems, and I see some of the comments from new people that go into the Discord chats for your, traffic ticket fighting and the Marcratic method in general. It seems to be nobody is on board with damage control and taking the time and as much funds as you can away from them because they have a set fee for a ticket, blah, blah, blah. And again, it's such a purist concept in there that, just like this voting thing, as your last caller was saying, it is an immoral act. I get that. And going down there and casting a ballot just keeps this system going. I know that's wrong. And it's the same, it seems to be the argument in the Discord. Either you're on board and you're willing to go to jail and lose everything on principle, or you're just, that's my whole thing is damage control. And in all your books, it always says you're never going to win. You don't win. You can't win. You've already lost the minute the cop pulls you over and gives you that ticket. The best you can hope for is damage control, educating other people by showing what you did, and holding funds from the state and wasting their time. And if 10% of us just did that, this whole mess would grind to a halt.
Well, the court system would. And when I talk about damage control, let's not confuse the issue here, especially with new people and new listeners. When I'm talking about damage control, it's just like you said. I'm talking about when they attack you. I'm not talking about as an act when you're working as an activist to get rid of the ruling class to get to a voluntary society.
Well, okay. I understand the activist, and I understand the principled guy who is willing to go to jail. I understand all that. But it's just like this appeal thing. In my opinion, you go through the traffic court, you get your first appeal, which is right there in the same district court. You're going to have to put some time in, blah, blah, blah. But if that judge, like my one loser that I have out of the 5 so-called, winners, damage control, where she stormed off the bench, and she knew she was the chief judge, and I would have to go to the next level up, which took a lot more hoops to jump through, and she was right. I didn't do it, and blah, blah, blah. There's no point. It is so useless to go on an appeal past that. Just chalk that one up as a loss and keep educating people, help them, do what you do with you file those motions, do the bluff, as I call it, at minimum, and waste as much time as they can, get your feet wet, realize that they're just men and women. You gain a lot of courage when you go to court and you start to do this. You get less and less afraid, and it gets clearer and clearer that there's a man behind the curtain. What's that guy doing over there? Oh, don't look over there. Yeah, wait a minute. He's just a man with pants on like me. And you get a lot more courage and wiser, and you lose fear of these criminals,
And maybe with that experience, you're able to confront them as an activist in front of their city councils or county commissioners, and on a regular basis, expose them as the criminals that they are. So more people can understand that. Just hold tight. We're up against the break. Boy, it's going fast today. We are at the end of another segment. We'll be back in just a few moments. So I'm not going to give the number out because we have enough callers to round out the show. If I don't get to everybody, remember, we are live on the Wednesday broadcast, commercial free. So yeah, check that out. But we are on a radio broadcast, so we will be back in just a few minutes. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. Talking with Tom from Detroit. And I just want to point out, I didn't get a chance to flesh this out a bit, but, the idea that if you do this, you're supporting it. And it just brought up the futility. Well, no one's a true X because you can't be consistent. And the thing is, you can hit people with the same argument. Well, if you're an anarchist, then you shouldn't do anything to support the current government. You should withdraw all your support and ignore them. So stop uploading videos to YouTube and stop using a cell phone. Stop paying for gas, because if you use the roads, it's impossible to go through in a modern life and avoid supporting local, state, and federal government. You can't. You can't. So we have to do what's practical, what we can actually do, what's in our power to do, and do something that'll bring about a change. So, I'm sorry, I don't remember where we were, so bring us back.
Okay, well, we're, just talking about the voting and such, and pretty much resolved what we were discussing, and I'd like to bring up 2 quick things. One, here in the city that I'm in, which is right on the outskirts of Detroit, the police last year killed a guy. Again, they claim he had a gun, blah blah blah, but they shot at this guy. They claim he got off 1 round, and they shot at him 48 times. And they actually one of the police officers shot their own dog. They sent the canine after the guy and shot his own dog. And all the city's in this big mourning for this dog. But this guy is dead, maybe rightfully so, but really 48 shots? Anyway, it's just, and the family now is suing the city. So this is very interesting. I'm really watching this thing.
Yeah, they care more about the dog. The dog is, There was also a video where a cop shot another cop I think I spoke about that a while back. So this is why I talk about going after the insurance and going to city councils and bringing these issues up. But if there was someone like if you had an opportunity to put in, like in Arizona, you can do an initiative if you could get on the ballot to strip cops of immunity, strip prosecutors of immunity. Why wouldn't you support that? I'm not saying that we're going to dedicate our entire lives to that, but it's something that I think is worth some effort.
Right? I mean, there's no reason they shouldn't have, because here's a good example. In Detroit, many of the precincts close down at about 6 p.m. because they don't have funds to pay for police. So there is a private police force that has been around for quite some time. They're not that expensive, but guess what? They have to follow the same rules you and I. They can't just go shoot somebody 48 times, go, oops, or whatever. They have to justify it, like if you and I shot an intruder in our home or whatever, they're under the same rules, and they're polite. They won't hire ex-military people because they don't want aggressive people. They try to defuse the situation. So private police can work just fine. But anyway, I know there's another caller wants to get on, and I just wanted to say one more quick thing. Okay. You've heard me talk about Dad. I respect this guy. He's retired computer guy, one of the smartest men I've ever met. And as a joke, okay, during the election in November here in Michigan, we could vote on the pot law. Well, he smokes as well as I do, and he's an anarchist to a degree. I'm getting him closer and closer to it. And he decided he was going to vote against it. And he gave his rationale, and it really pissed me off. So when at the end of the election night, I called him up. I said, hey, Q and I went down and voted, and we voted straight ticket Democrat. We voted all Democrat. He is so angry with me right now. He hasn't spoken to me since November. I've had a couple of emails with him, but very brief. But he won't talk to me. He's that mad at me and we didn't vote. We didn't actually do it. I just told him that because he pissed me off with his voting against the pot law, which did pass. But anyway, I just thought that was kind of a funny story I wanted to share. So
he's that angry at you, maybe he stopped smoking.
No, he hasn't stopped smoking. But he's mad at me because I supposedly voted Democrat. He's not mad at me for voting against or voting for the decriminalization of recreational marijuana. He's mad at me because he believes that Q and I voted straight across, all Democrat, and we didn't. But, I haven't told him yet that we didn't, but I'm just letting him stew in it, and how stupid that is. And he's such a smart guy. Anyway.
It was a joke.
I just wanted to share it. Another guy wants to get on.
I appreciate the call, Tom.
All right, bye.
Yeah, it was just a joke. Typically, people who are, smoke pot are pretty easygoing, chill people. They're not holding a grudge and being so angry about something months and months later. So it's just my attempt at some pot humor. Anyway, we got area code 509. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from?
I'm calling from Washington. My name is Esoteric the Free. You might have seen me in chat, and people in chat might recognize me because I also have a decent-sized YouTube channel where I make anarchist content. Particularly, I specialize in counter-economics. Well, I just wanted to call about the issue of voting.
All right, great.
Hello?
What do you got?
All right. So the problem that I've noticed with people who discuss the issue of voting is that they treat politicians as if they are individuals working within a system and not as if the system is actually actively shaping their interests, which is the main problem. I typically tend to avoid the morality discussion on voting because I think that that's outside of the collectivist circles. I would say that's a pretty closed and shut case. Trying to create laws that's unethical, trying to impose your will onto people, that's unethical, but it can be ethically justified if it is an act of self-defense. But the problem is that you run into a contradiction with the morality of it, which is if a libertarian politician were to get into office, well, what are they going to do when they have to collect money for the state? What are they going to do when a lot of the means by which the state has instituted economic controls has to be enforced on certain businesses? when it runs in the interests of the state. So it's not actually possible for a politician to be libertarian, which is a point that I've made, and it's a point that I don't know if you're familiar with Konkin, but he went into great detail in. But that's the interesting thing to note.
Well, Esoteric, just hold on a second. We're up against the break. My name's Marc Stevens. Listen to the No State Project here on the Liberty Radio Network. We're talking about voting today. Can you be an anarchist and vote? Is it moral? Is it immoral? Is it a waste of time? Well, we'll talk about that and more when we get back from this short break, so don't go away. Well, welcome to the No State Project. The number I've given out before, I didn't look at my Skype, so I'm really sorry. But the number is 218-632-9399, and the passcode is 2020 with the pound sign. But I'm probably running out of time and can't take any more callers. I think, we've got the last caller, but we'll see how it goes. Let me bring them back up. So you're talking about someone can't be a voluntarist and still vote?
No, you can't be a voluntarist and be a politician.
Oh.
I did say that you could vote, but as an act of self-defense, that was potentially justifiable. However, what the first caller, I believe he was attempting to touch upon something, but he didn't articulate it very well. I don't know. I'm not trying to speak for him, but he was making a very common point, which I've heard, which is that there's a reason why the media and politicians specifically tell people to vote, and this is particularly why, I mean, I previously came from your position, Mark, but this is why I started questioning it, is I was wondering why all of these, the upper echelons of power in society were, wanting people to vote as the only means of achieving political change. But that's a form of, social conditioning. It's to make people feel as if they are fundamentally dependent on the state for political change, and that the only way they can achieve political change is for the state. That's not to say that voting is itself unethical. It's that by telling people the only means by which any political change can occur is if you vote, that only gets people to feel as if they can only achieve political change through voting, and they won't go out and bother with counter economics because they'll think of trying to deprive the state of revenue, and they'll say, well, what's that got to do with voting? How can I achieve political change through that? But that's a very important thing that people need to understand, is that these are the state has a fundamental mode of operating, and it uses social issues sort of as a way to attempt to manipulate the population as well. But that's one thing that it will absolutely never compromise on, is the economic front, and that's because it constantly needs to expand its influence over the market in order to keep itself sustained, since everything it does operates on an exponential growth curve. I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit off topic.
I agree with you,
but
I'm not objecting to what you're saying. And it's definitely put in your mind, and they say that and there are too many examples of this. So they teach you this in school. There's one single way to affect political change. One, vote. We just went through that. Where they get the talking heads, the teachers, in school, and then you hear on TV. So I agree that is definitely a way. Yes, they want to foreclose on anything outside of that. Work within the system as the only method of change, and that's completely, that's nonsense.
But that's ultimately the way you achieve political change, is to deprive the state of revenue. Would you agree with me on that?
Well, I mentioned earlier the hit them in the money, because that's where they take notice. So if you can, if we have people who are going through the court system and things don't work out well, that they should be filing complaints and clogging up their courts with complaints against their insurance. I think that's something, yeah, absolutely hit them that way. That's one way.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that they like more money for themselves. Granted, they do. It's that if they have less money, then they can't actually sustain a lot of these regulations they have on the market, funding for their police and their wars, which is that's the reason why it affects them as much as it does. Whereas voting, I mean, you can't even prove that these people, I mean, you've pointed this out, but you can't even prove that they serve you, much less hold them accountable to their words, much less hold them accountable to things that they say they're going to do.
Well, yeah,
but
I mean, the facts prove that they don't represent us. They don't work on our behalf because they're forcing us to pay them. It's that simple.
Right. Well, the reason why I think, and here's my position, is that at its root is that a lot of people think, oh, well, these politicians, it's a system that corrupts. But that's, I think, a false way of looking at it. It's that the system is itself corrupt and the incentives it creates are those of unethical ones. And this can be seen just by looking at the actual way that laws are passed and how the political parties are structured, not just in the U.S., but in governments around the world. I mean, and I think this was objectively demonstrated in a Princeton EDU study done in 2014, where they took a measure of 1,779 policy issues, both on a federal and local level, through the entire United States, and measured the likelihood of these bills passing, and their rate of passing and their effects on how much they were supported by the general population was null. It was the exact same, it had the exact same percentage of passing either way. If it had no support or 100% of the support of the population. So I think if that alone doesn't shed a light on how effective voting for political change is, I think if you just looking, like I mentioned earlier, looking at the party structure should also shed some light on that. I mean, these are not directly state-funded organizations. I mean, to an extent they are, if you account for the funding that they get from the branches of the U.S. military and through these NGOs which receive funding from the CIA or these branches of the state. But no, these political parties, they have direct connections with the executive, with all three of the branches of the state, and they're heavily influenced by the state in just their basic function. So of course all of the political parties are going to function in the exact same way, which is that they're going to not only do the exact same things, but sorry about that. But they're going to function the exact same way. And, but a way that I've seen that they try and pretend they don't is they do the exact same thing, but they like to pretend that, like, they try to, convince people that their intention is the only difference. Great example of this would be raising taxes versus creating tariffs on foreign imports. It has the exact same effect on the market, which is that it increases the cost of products for trade, and it deprives people of revenue and creates inflation on the currency. But it, they're advertised differently. One is a tax increase for income, and one's a tax on imports. But yeah,
bottom line,
I feel like I'm rambling again. But
and I've got another caller that I want to get to. So I do appreciate the call. But yeah, we are up against the break. So what I'm going to do is I appreciate the call. And we're going to go to another caller, and just I'm going to mute out the feed. So I'm going to bring our other caller on. So we're still on the YouTube feed, so nobody has to complain that, I'm not talking because it's a break. But we have area code 616. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Scott from Michigan. How's it going, Mark?
It's going pretty good, though we're pretty much out of time. So you're from Michigan also, from the Big D?
No, Grand Rapids.
All right. Hey, cool. What can I do for you today,
Very
Scott?
quickly, I use a strategy that I found on the website when cross-examining a police officer, ask him if he's there of his own free will and ask him if he's there under subpoena. He answered yes to both, but the judge acted like no big deal. He didn't contradict himself. Those could be the same thing. What would you say to that?
Well, it's not always necessary to do that in a traffic case. That's why I talk about going straight for the throat. Did you determine on your own, about the law, and then asking for the facts that that he's relied on to support his claim that the law is applied?
That was the question I asked him in between those two questions. So I did ask him that, but it didn't go anywhere.
Oh, well, okay. Well, that's a denial of cross-examination. Did they not allow the police officer to answer the second question about facts?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So, your objective is to show that this is unfair, and if you do appeal it, obviously denial of effective cross-examination is a fantastic issue. It's one of the, if you can't win on that, then you've got evidence of a rigged system. But as far as the one about the police officer contradicting himself, you could just ask the witness directly. So please explain, if you can, how you could be here under subpoena and be here on your own free will at the same time. Or you could ask him, what's the consequence if you did not comply with the subpoena today?
Right.
So that was something that our friend up in Alaska brought out, and he had asked the judge to explain what the consequences were of not complying with the subpoena, and the judge says, "I'm not going to help you out with that." You have to ask the witness.
The judge said, "Take it up with the prosecutor if you think the officer perjured himself."
Yeah, well, they're definitely being contradictory. That's certainly, and so that goes to their credibility as a witness. They're saying they're here by their own free will, but they're on a subpoena. Which one is it? And you can ask them which one.
Well,
you can ask them. That's a good.
The judge backed him up on that. Is that a high risk maneuver for the judge to back him up on that and say, "No, I don't see any evidence of perjury"?
Well, you're not necessarily saying that he's lying, that he's perjured himself. What you're showing is that he's got inconsistent statements. He's not a credible witness. You don't have to jump to the perjury. It's easier to just show what it is, and that it's a contradiction. Sir, you said you're here on your own free will, but you're under subpoena. Which one is it? But as far as I'm concerned, Scott, you did a pretty, you've got what you need to be able to prevail on appeal, and that is a denial of effective cross-examination. Because for those new, if you asked a police officer to restate his position, which is that he saw you in Michigan, determined the laws applied, and that he had jurisdiction and probable cause, and when you follow up on what facts he support that decision, and the judge and the prosecutor stop the cross-examination, don't allow him to answer, you've got a constitutional error of the first magnitude. And no amount of showing a want of prejudice will cure it. That's Burkhardt versus Janus. There's a lot of cases that also quote that. It goes back a long time. It's denial of effective cross. That is all you need and should need to be able to show you denied a fair trial and be able to get that thing reversed. If it's not reversed, then that's your evidence of the rigged game.
Well, you just explained to me what the subject of my appellate brief will be, so that answers another question too. That's great.
I figured that's where it was going, but, people shouldn't be disheartened when we go in there and they do that. They do it every time. I tell people every time they're going into court. I've said it 1,000 times on the show. This is what they're going to do because, again, only one instance that's ever been reported to me has a police officer been allowed to answer that question. And he said, I don't know.
Every step of the way, they act that way. I mean, they go out of their way to behave in a way that makes you feel like you're wrong, make you feel dejected, make you feel bad about yourself, make you feel ashamed of yourself for even trying to fight this.
Sure.
And you have to shake that off, or else they'll get you down.
Well, and I want to say that people who are new, I know. I went, and even after my experience of speaking with so many bureaucrats over all these years, and I did this in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, England. I've got decent amount of experience, and it was still a little difficult to get in front of the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court at the ASU Law School, where there's like 200 lawyers behind me, and I'm going to ask him this question. It's unorthodox, yes. It just, here I am going and asking a question that is heresy to these people. So I understand, and that's why Scott, I recommend getting the jitters, get some relief from the jitters by going and asking these same questions in front of an audience at the city council. Because what you're talking about is what is kind of fashionable now to describe as gaslighting, where they try to make you feel that you're crazy for questioning what they're doing.
Yes. Yeah, I just recently rewatched the video of you doing that at the city council, and that's powerful. You're right about that.
Yeah, and it was tough for the city council because it was my first time appearing like that in such a meeting, and I was completely bald. In fact, some of the people that came to watch and support didn't know I was there. I walk out, I was like, "What the hell were you guys?"
I thought it was real slick that you took the remainder of the time and kept pushing the issue. That was real cool, man.
Yeah, it was. It needs to be done more. I'm kind of limited in my scope. I'd like to be able to get back and do that again. I'm kind of limited to just doing something like that on the phone, but I would like to see other people pick up the mantle. Maybe Grand Rapids or one of the other areas. You could get some video for us.
I'm doing it, man. Actually, I'm 4 and 6 so far in traffic cases. I've had 4 dismissals just with the motion to dismiss.
Holy crap! Have you sent me this documentation?
No, but I will.
Yeah. No, wait. Now we got a few minutes here. Now I got somebody on the line that I can discuss this with, because I've mentioned before that there are a lot of people, a lot of tickets have gotten thrown out, and I've only been able to post a fraction of the tickets that have been tossed out because not everybody sends me the documents. You've had 4 out of 6 tossed out, and you haven't sent me anything yet.
I mean, I walked into the courtroom and nobody was there. And the clerk was like, "Oh, yeah, that's been dismissed." And it was so hard to act like I wasn't surprised.
Well, it's like, it would have been nice if someone told me. Hopefully you didn't have to travel too far to find that out.
No, it was just a quick trip downtown. So, and I was so happy to win. I didn't care about that,
Nice.
But on motion of the plaintiff, the case is dismissed.
Oh, I'm looking forward to getting that. I've had a lot of those. We've had a lot of those where the prosecution withdraws.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't send it because it's a really crummy carbon copy. It's hard to read, but I will try to high quality scan it and I'll send it on to you.
Okay. Do what you can. I'd like to be able to post that. I mean, if you've got 4 out of 6, you may be able to go online and you may be able to just do a screen cap of the docket.
Yeah, I mean, I have a binder with all of my paperwork, everything that I've ever done with it. So, I mean, I have everything documented.
Nice. I appreciate that. I'm going to try to squeeze in one more call because it has to do with court stuff, and I had to call the show, and he finally
go on to other people. Thank you so much.
Hey, Scott, Michigan, I do appreciate the call, and looking forward to seeing those docs.
Thank you. I'll send them soon.
Prego, Paisa. All right, we got one last call. We'll do what we can. We got about 5 minutes left. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Oh, hey, Mark. How's it going? This is Imran.
Imran, no.
Hello?
Yeah, I thought it was somebody else who was calling about court. But hey, were you in the Valley? Or wait, you're not in Arizona anymore, are you?
No, I'm here.
Oh, were you
Yeah,
where?
cold as hell.
Were you in any of the snow?
Unfortunately not.
That's too bad. I got friends, of course, in Scottsdale, and they sent pictures, and it's so cool to get these pictures where there's snow on the saguaros, and you got a cactus.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not getting.
I got a question for you.
Sure.
Oh, are you going to somebody else?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. We talked over each other, but what do you got? We got about 3 minutes.
Yeah. So I was wondering on the arraignment. What is it? Is it considered? Would you consider it an unlawful arraignment where it's just the clerk of the court and the commissioner, and the commissioner enters a plea, even if you state that you don't consent to entering any plea, because what that would mean is that there's no prosecutor, there's nobody moving this along. The only person who's moving along is the judge, and I would consider that as practicing law from the bench, which according to their laws is unlawful.
Yeah, well, the commissioner, you're talking about minor traffic here, where there would be a commissioner. And in the minor traffic, there typically is
I'm talking about arraignment.
Arraignment, yeah.
Arraignment in
right,
like a criminal.
It's criminal, but it's probably a very minor thing where they have a commissioner that's doing it. If it's Arizona, like Peer Pan, for example.
But wouldn't that be unlawful arraignment?
No, not that case. It's not lawful because there's not a shred of evidence to show jurisdiction, even at the prima facie level. But
but in their mind, the what do you call it? The arraignment establishes jurisdiction, because what they're saying is, well, what the U.S. Constitution reads, the Supreme Court is a court of original jurisdiction in criminal matters. Okay, so in Colorado, there was a Colorado ruling that said lower courts can establish jurisdiction if the parties consent. So what happens in a criminal matter is the lower courts always handle criminal matters as opposed to the Supreme Court, which is the court of original jurisdiction, because they enter the plea, so they consider the plea as the party defendant consenting.
You're mixing so many things up here. We're about out of time. The federal constitution and the jurisdiction to the federal Supreme Court has got absolutely nothing to do with the jurisdiction of the state courts. So it completely irrelevant. Consent is not, I'd have to see what kind of proceeding it was where they're talking about consent, because outside of a divorce filing, consent, I don't see as being an issue. Unless there's other things regarding, but not just in general, the issue of jurisdiction. The issue of the plea is, I want to make sure that we're almost out of time. The issue with the plea, though, Imran, is never, ever, ever go in saying you don't consent to this, because they take it that you are refusing the plea, and then it's not considered the practice of law for him to enter a plea of not guilty for you. We want to make sure that we're there under threat, duress, and coercion, and participating. We are not appearing, okay? And that we intend on pleading guilty if the prosecution has met their prima facie burden on jurisdiction, personal and subject matter.
Right.
So a lot of I don't have the time to break down all the stuff that you were saying, but a lot of it isn't relevant to a state court traffic proceeding.
Right. Okay. All right, no problem.
I appreciate the call.
Right, thanks.
We're out of time. Imran here in the Valley, where hey, in parts of the Valley, not where I live, didn't hit us in Mesa, Arizona, but hey, Superstition Mountains, and yes, they're that way. Covered. So maybe I'll use that as the thumbnail for the video. We'll put it in when I post the podcast at markstevens.net. I appreciate everybody tuning in to the big show here today. I will be live on Wednesday. Remember, if you enjoy the content and you're getting something out of it, please really appreciate any support that you can give the show. It is markstevens.sales.com, and you can just go to my website, markstevens.net. I will be live on the Wednesday show, so for whoever I may have missed today, I will get you there. So, hey, you know the deal. Till next time, salud. Bye,